How are you, Jim? Good. Thank you, Governor. Good morning, good afternoon, I guess, to everyone. My name is Jim Kurtbach, and I am on the governor's team as a volunteer. I have the North Central part of the state. And I want to talk to you briefly about why I volunteered and why I think it's so darn important for all of you to get out here on January 3rd at the caucuses and do what I am doing. Put your name behind Mitt Romney and make sure that he is our next president of the United States. There's a couple of reasons I think it's really, really important for you to support Governor Romney. First, this is a man I've known for 5 years, and I've grown to trust him. And trust is extremely important to me. There's a few things. I first met Governor Romney as a business person, and I don't think we have anyone campaigning for president who has his business experience and his international business experience. He's someone who can speak the language throughout. But as I grew to know him, both as a husband to Ann and as a father to 5 sons, I learned to trust him. And part of the reason it was important for me to be here today is my dear wife Ann and I are entrusting the next commander-in-chief with our 2 most precious possessions. We've been married 25 years, and we have 2 sons who have decided that they will go into the military career. So we have 1 son who graduated from West Point this last May and is now a 2nd lieutenant in the U.S. Army, attached to the infantry at Fort Benning, Georgia. And before I forget, thank you to all the veterans who have served on this Pearl Harbor Day as we remember them. Our 2nd son decided that he would follow in the footsteps of his brother, but at a different academy. He's at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis. So this last weekend of Army-Navy Day was really interesting for us. We went on either side, Governor, so it's a great game and a great history. But that's how important this campaign is to me. When I talk about the Commander-in-Chief, and I think about who's going to lead our country for the next 4 years, it's a very personal level. It's someone that I want to know when he commits our troops as the spearhead to go into battle as a last resort for our country. My sons will be at that spearhead. And I want someone I can personally trust, someone who I've gotten to know over the last few years, and someone who I've developed a very strong respect for as a person, that he will do the right things. So with no further ado, Governor Romney, thank you.
I'm honored to be here today in a historic place, as you recognize. It seems that I'm going from historic place to historic place. The event yesterday took me to the Bush Library with the former president, which was very moving, and I'm here also in now a very famous place, a place of significance, where we recognize the contribution made by the Tuskegee Airmen. This as a museum here at Fort Des Moines. It's an officer candidate school for African American officer candidates, and the significance is not lost on me that we're here on the day where we commemorate the loss of 2,400 lives at Pearl Harbor. Their memory is etched in our minds, and this is a date which will long live in infamy as we recognize the infamous attack against our sovereignty and our peace and our citizens. So I'm happy to be flanked with a good friend, Jim, and my son, Josh. Josh, I just have to describe as one of my personal heroes for a lot of reasons. Josh has a lot of things he could be doing in his life this year, but he's been kind enough to help me in my campaign, and his mom, at my announcement, which was not terribly far from here at the airport, she got up and said, my son Josh wants to visit all of Iowa. He's agreed to go to every county in Iowa. I don't think she knew that was 99 counties. And Josh got a Winnebago on eBay, and he's pointed out that I paid for it, but he got it. And he has visited every county. He has 3 children, and his wife and those 3 kids visited most of those counties together. But Josh is my hero, and I wanted him to be recognized by you this morning. Now, yesterday I was also at a place where we recognized people of significance and their contribution to the country. And the person in particular was George Herbert Walker Bush. I don't know if any of you here have been to the Bush Library. I see one nodding head. The Bush, oh, some over here too. Very moving. Very, very moving. You go through and you see the early days of President Bush, and you see his service to his country and in various the intelligence community and so forth. But the part of the museum that chokes your throat, or it did mine, was the one I mentioned yesterday, which is there is a film. It's a looks like an 8mm film. Someone home video, someone shot of from the top of a submarine. Of course, it's surfaced. The submarine is surfaced, and on that submarine, you see this soldier climbing out of a life raft, getting on the end of the submarine, and then walking all the way down the length of the submarine, and then climbing up into the entry of the submarine. Of course, that's George Herbert Walker Bush as a young airman. He was shot down on a bombing run. If I have the story correct, he was on his way in to carry out the bombardment. His plane was hit. He kept going. He could have turned around and made it back, perhaps more likely to get back safely to the carrier. Instead, he kept going. He dropped the bombs. He turned around. The plane was unable to get back to safety and crashed. His co-pilot was killed, presumably in the shooting that occurred. They never found the co-pilot. He was sitting behind him, so we couldn't see him or talk to him. And President Bush reminded me, as I saw that film and as I see him, he reminded me of the great sacrifice made by men and women in our armed services and the willingness of Americans to stand up and defend liberty and to defend freedom around the world. And of course, you're doing the same thing here at this museum in Fort Des Moines, remembering the heroes that have served here and that have come through this place to defend liberty. One of our other heroes, of course, came from here. You probably know that, and that is that Ronald Reagan was commissioned as second lieutenant right here in Fort Des Moines. And I'm sure there have been many, many other great and noble individuals who stood up for American liberty and have done so in this very place. We are an unusual land. People of this country have sacrificed more than the people of any other nation in the history of the world to preserve freedom and liberty. And we will stand up from our homes and from wherever we might live, always preserve those things which we hold most dear. And Jim, I do indeed think that the responsibility of Commander-in-Chief is one which is extraordinary in the significance and depth, and we consider that with the greatest degree of respect and honor. And I can assure you I would do nothing but serve in a way that would be fitting of the great sacrifices made by your family to have those two sons in a military service. Now, you know that we face challenges of some significance in this country. We face global jihadists, violent jihadists who would bring down our nation and other civilized nations of the world. We face tough competition coming from across the world economically. From Asia, we face domestic challenges. And it's going to be time for Americans to stand up again, to overcome the challenges we face, so that we can remain the nation that has always preserved the peace. Now, you can take your inspiration from different places. Some folks tend to take their inspiration from the Europe of old, with big government, big taxes, and big brother as the course for America. That's not the path I think is right for America. Instead, I turn to the inspiration of someone like Ronald Reagan. When Ronald Reagan led this country and we faced the greatest threat of the 20th century, that threat was the threat of Soviet expansionism and communism around the world. And he had as the course for America strengthening this land, making America such a strong land that the Soviets wouldn't be able to compete. He looked to strengthen America by having us rebuild our confidence in ourselves, and he brought an optimism that we had not seen in a long time during the Carter years. He also strengthened our economy, kept our taxes down so that we could grow our economy. And then he strengthened our military. And he took our military spending to almost 6% of the economic activity of our country. Now, in the years after Ronald Reagan, there was a sense once the Cold War had been won that there was no more evil on the earth, and therefore we could cut back on our military. And we took our military spending from 6% now all the way down to 3.8%. And our armed forces went from 2 million to 1.5 million active duty in the armed forces. We took out almost 80 ships in our Navy and cut our Air Force by 25%. And so as I look at the challenges we face today, I recognize it's time for us to rebuild our military strength, particularly now as it's being tested so significantly and as so much of our equipment has grown old. And in the cases of the equipment that's made it to the Middle East, it's grown pretty shabby as well, as it's been shot up and destroyed in many cases. And so we're going to have to rebuild that strength. And we're going to do it by adding at least 100,000 troops to our active duty personnel, by investing once again in equipment in this country. We need additional armament and protection for our soldiers to make sure they're safe and that they're successful in the battlefield. And we need to make sure as well that we make the investment necessary to give our veterans the care they deserve when they come home. So I will strengthen our military. I believe the best thing we can do to remember our veterans is to make sure that we preserve the very nation and the liberty that they fought to protect themselves. We call President Bush's generation the greatest generation. Looks like most of us here are a little younger than he is. We're getting a little closer to him in age. But we recognize that generation as the greatest generation, I believe, in part for all the things they left us, the sacrifice they made to preserve liberty, the sacrifice they made to build the strongest economy in the world, the sacrifice they made to put us in college, to send us into our GIs into colleges so that they could get the kind of jobs that would be able to provide for them for the rest of their lives, and so they could help lead the world with new products and innovation that would lead America to be the most powerful economy in the world. They sacrificed for us time and time again and left us a nation which is free and prosperous. And now it's our turn. It's our generation's turn to decide what we're going to leave our kids and our grandkids and theirs. And in my view, it's time for us to also leave a strong and peaceful and prosperous nation. It's time for us to make sure that we leave our kids the values that will allow them to have a bright future. Values like belief in something greater than themselves, belief in God, or if they don't believe in God, something, as you know, Rick Warren wrote in his book about a purpose-driven life. Americans, even if they don't believe in God, believe in something greater than themselves. So purpose in life, belief in hard work, belief in education, belief in family, belief in country and patriotism. Let's leave our kids these kinds of values and a fundamentally American optimistic outlook that the future can be brighter than the past, that our country will grow and learn and always be good and the hope of the world. Let's also leave our kids an economy that's so vibrant and so dynamic. We have the economic strength to maintain our lead militarily as well as economically, and then let's leave a strong military. And I think that you're going to see in this coming election a choice between people who anticipate seeing an America that's stronger, that follows the course that Ronald Reagan laid out, and people who instead take their inspiration from Europe and think of government and taxes and Big Brother as the source of American strength. I think they're wrong. I think the source of American strength has always been the strength of the American people. And strengthening the American people is what I'm dedicated and devoted to doing. Now, I heard some years ago from a gentleman who was visiting Boston, the former Prime Minister of Israel. His name was Shimon Peres. He was head of the Liberal Party in Israel. And he was asked what he thought about the war in Iraq. And he said, before I answer that, I have to place it in context. He said, in the history of the world, whenever there's been war, the nation that wins takes land from the nation that loses, because land has always been the source of value on the planet. He said, one nation in history, and this during the last century, has laid down hundreds of thousands of lives and taken no land. No land from Germany, Japan, Korea. America is unique, he said, in history because of its willingness to sacrifice for freedom. As Colin Powell pointed out in his book, the only land we took after the conflict of that last great war was enough land to bury our dead. This is a great nation, a unique nation. It is essential that this nation remain strong in our values, in our homes, in our economy, and in our military. And so on this day of remembrance of those many lives lost at Pearl Harbor, and also of the Tuskegee Airmen, and the sacrifice made by people of all ethnicities and faiths and cultures and geographies to protect freedom, let us not forget that one of the great sources of our freedom is the strength of character of the American people. And let us always be dedicated to keeping that character strong and good and making sure that America remains the hope of the earth. Thank you so much. We don't have a long time here today, but I'm going to take a question or two if you guys have something you'd like to ask. There's one gentleman back here waving his hand. How are you, sir?
When is Congress and all the candidates running going to realize that our American Army spread out as thin as mayonnaise on a hamburger sandwich or ham sandwich, and we need to reinstate the draft? We need to reinstate the draft to make sure, send a strong message to the terrorist people all around the world, all walks of life, that we maintain our army and we want to be free and independent. I went in at 17 years old, my brother was 18. We both volunteered. We served during 2 Lebanon crises, Vietnam crisis, also the Cuban crisis, and we got extended up to a year extra time. Mexican American, our family name is in 1859, and yet people still treat us like we just got off the banana boat in Panama. And I kind of resent that, and I also resent the fact that right now we have men and women making sacrifices for their country while other people are ignoring it. Less than 5–10% of the people right now have served in the military. Prior to 1960, it was 22% of Americans laid down their lives or contributed to the military. I met my 6-year about the gate. Most of the Hispanics in the Des Moines area have too. And I think that it's time now for all Americans to come forward, volunteer, reinstate the draft, and make sure that America gets to be free and stay free. Thank you.
Thank you. First, thank you for your service. And you said your brother as well, sir. Is he still living?
Yes.
That's good to hear. And where was home? Did you serve in this area? Was this?
I started out in infantry. We both started out in infantry.
I mean, where did you come from? Were you living here in Des Moines, or were you?
I was.
And your brother?
Raised in Valley Junction. We both.
Okay, both in Valley Junction.
Well, that's West Des Moines, but they changed the name and that.
Let's give this young man. Appreciate the service that you've given. I think you've had your turn. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me respond to your question on the draft. And that is, I do not believe we should have a draft. We need to return to the draft to have a strong and able military. And I believe that in part because I've seen the experience of what happens if we provide to our military the kinds of benefits and rewards that America should provide. In my state, we saw every year about 6% of our enrollments in our National Guard going down 6% a year. And then the legislature and I passed something known as the Welcome Home Bill. And it said that if you signed up for the National Guard, you'd get 4 years tuition and fee-free at any Massachusetts public institution of higher learning. And our enrollments went up 30%. Men and women said, yeah, I want that. I want to be able to have that military career, and I want that education. And so I want to make sure we provide the benefits to our young men and young women, which make it a good deal, an interesting opportunity for them to be able to serve in the military. And so that's, in my view, how we'll be able to build the troops from our current 1.5 million approximately active duty to about 1.6 million, which I think is the number that we need. I also think we're going to have to increase our military funding from about 3.8% of our economic activity to about 4%. That doesn't sound like a lot. But that little change in percent takes us up about $40 or $50 billion a year, would allow us to build new equipment, to buy new equipment for our soldiers to be safe and to be successful, and also allow us to take better care of our veterans. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, Governor Romney, I was actually commissioned here also, and I just got back in August from Iraq. And I don't believe we're stretched thin. In fact, I think we're actually winning this war quite well. And so I do believe that our Army's doing an excellent job. My question, though, is do you the future of the reserve as being more of an operational enhancement of the active duty, or going back to being more of a strategic reserve? And for either one, why do you believe that? How do you see that happening?
Well, I think what we're going to have to do is, as we consider the National Guard, the reserves, and the active duty personnel, we're going to have to consider different forms of conflict. And one of the challenges we have right now with the nature of the ongoing conflict and the security role that we're playing in Iraq is that the National Guard, which has been a support function, and reserve as well, doing MP work, transportation, logistics, and so forth, somehow that's the front lines in Iraq. And so we anticipated, we'd have the guys in active duty doing the front lines work, and then the Guard and Reserve would be performing the, if you will, the support roles. Well, in a setting like Iraq, that is the front line. And so I think we're going to have to reconsider the involvement and the participation of our active duty personnel in some of these support functions to make sure that we don't have to draw as heavily upon the reserve component of our military if we have events or circumstances like the one that we had in Iraq. And so we're going to have to look very carefully at the kinds of conflicts we might have down the road and not put ourselves in a position where we're demanding so much of our reserve and Guard units. Thank you. Yes, sir. Hi.
Romney, yesterday I watched your speech down in Texas, and I've seen several times the well almost came to life on this conviction that you had in your speech, and you did give a speech about what I thought you'd say and how you present it. So that wasn't a big surprise to me. But what I want to talk to you about is when I want to go Christmas shopping, and I did a little bit of it already. Every time I pick up something, I see it's made in China, and I know we got a big imbalance on goods and stuff, imports by the billions that we have to pay extra to get our goods sold over there. So we're losing jobs that we used to make cars, used to make televisions, used to make airplanes and everything else overseas. How can we get into something that would give us a secure place where the Americans are not the people producing here in America the products that we're using?
Yeah. But let me answer. It's a critical question. I'm going to answer kind of two parts. One, I'm going to tell you what some people will tell you, and that you're going to be tempted to say, that sounds good to me. And that's going to be say, you know what? We're going to put a wall around this country and keep those foreign goods from coming in. Because they're not fighting fair, and we can't compete with them. It's too cheap. Their labor rates are too low, and we got to protect ourselves for their products and not let those Chinese or Japanese TVs and toys and video games, we've got to keep those from coming in so we can buy them here from Americans. And that sounds good for a while. But think about what happens down the road. If you say that America can't compete, that we can't manufacture and sell goods and services in a way that's competitive with other nations, what does that say about what our military future might be like? If we can't compete with our cars and our TVs and our software and our computers, we end up thinking we can't compete in those things, then how are we going to compete in our ships and our aircraft carriers and our other military equipment and technology? And how are we going to stay the strongest economy in the world, leading the world economically, if we don't think we can compete with the world? And so, and by the way, one other thing, if we put a wall up around us, they'll pull a wall up around them too. And right now, 1 to 3 acres, for instance, planted in agriculture, is for going offshore, going overseas. If we tell them they can't have their goods come here, they won't let our goods go there either, because they'll retaliate. And that would hurt Iowa an awful lot. As a matter of fact, Iowa has more agricultural per capita that's exported than any other nation, any other state in the nation. So it's not, so tempting though it is to say, let's put up a wall, the better idea, in my opinion, is to say, let's make sure competition is fair with those other guys and make ourselves more competitive at the same time. Now, how do you do those two things? In terms of fairness with the Chinese, we got to be serious about them revaluing their currency, because they're putting a discount, manipulating their currency to put a discount on their goods. In addition, they're not protecting our patents and our designs, so in effect, they're able to take our technology without paying for it. That we can't let keep happening. And then we're going to have to make a better effort to be more competitive globally. How do you do that? You have better schools. You say, you know what, we're going to put the kids first and the teachers union behind. We're going to invest in better education. I want to pay our better teachers more money. I want to have better teachers and have them have a great prospect for the future. I want to make sure that in this nation, we want a stronger economy. Why, we're going to get our dependence on foreign oil now, develop our own sources of energy, and at the same time, invest in ways to bring energy efficiency to the fore, and investing in that kind of technology will allow us to lead the world in other sectors, such as energy efficiency and new sources of energy. There are ways America can stay ahead. We do not have to fall behind the rest of the world. We do not have to fall behind China or anybody else. We can compete with anybody. We can lead the world, but the only way you lead the world is by being in it. You can't lead the world and put a wall around yourself and say, we're not strong enough to compete with everybody else. We can, we will. By the way, we're not losing manufacturing. You should know manufacturing output in the United States continues to grow. So we're not falling behind, but we're facing some real challenges, some real threats. We have to invest in education, in technology, in energy technology. I want to open more markets to our goods and make sure that the competition is fair. I spent my life in the private sector, in the business world. I've done business in 20 different nations around the world. And so I know something about competing around the world. As we enter into agreements with other nations, I'll be able to tell what helps and what hurts us, and make sure that when we sign agreements, they help America, not just the other guy. And so I'm convinced America can compete, we will compete, and we'll win, and America's kids will have a bright future because America's economy will lead the world.
After all, we invented most of this stuff.
After all, we invented it all. Thanks. Yes.
As part of that, the North American Union, as it's sometimes referred to, how would that fit into your idea of a new economy in the U.S.?
Well, any idea to combine our nation with any other nation is nutty, in my opinion. Any discussion of a superhighway or relinquishing our sovereignty in some way with other nations in North America makes no sense at all. And if I'm president, there's no way that would happen. Pretty straightforward. I want to thank you for being here. I want to ask you to go out and vote a couple of times at the caucuses in 2 days. And I guess it's almost a month away, not quite a month away. And appreciate your help. Appreciate your support and your hard work. Recognize that our future is even brighter than our past. This is not a nation that has a bleak future. This is a nation with a great and glorious future. We are a good people and we are a strong nation. As long as we make the right choices as we face our challenges today, we'll emerge even stronger. My dad used to say to me, when I complained, I'd say, Dad, I don't want to go out and weed the garden. He had me weeding all the time. And he'd say, Mitt, the pursuit of the difficult makes men strong. And I used to say, gosh, that's an awful highfalutin statement for someone that's being asked to weed the garden. But his idea stuck with me. The pursuit of the difficult makes men strong. The pursuit of challenges will make us a stronger nation. If we stay true to the things we believe, if we make sure that we're strong in our economy, in our homes, in our military, we will become an even stronger nation in the future. Our prospects will be bright. We'll never have to worry about people being able to pass us because they're so much stronger than we are. We will instead be able to lead the world. And I am devoted to keeping America strong, to making sure that the future for our kids and our grandkids is bright. There's something strange that happens when you turn 60 years old. I know a couple of you have been there, looking around the room. I turned 60 this year. You stop worrying so much about yourself, and you start spending more and more time wondering about what's coming behind, what you've left behind. And I want to make sure that the America we leave behind is the great and prosperous and safe nation that we inherited. And I'll do just that with your help. Thank you so much.